Welcome back to All About Winning Daily Fantasy Sports. My name is Ty Patton. My favorite video of the week is finally here when I take all the research and strategy from my previous videos and put it all together to build manual lineups, optimize lineups using the player pool that I have developed. Before we put all this together, let's recap the player pool that has been created in my previous videos. Quarterbacks: Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, Jameis Winston, Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, Allen from Carolina, Tom Brady, and Russell Wilson. Running backs: Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, Leonard Fournette, Derrick Henry, Le'Veon Bell, Joe Mixon, Montgomery from the Bears, James White, Darius Geis, Kareem Hunt, and I've added Ezekiel Elliott. Wide receivers: Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, Tyler Lockett, Mike Evans, Godwin from Tampa Bay, Ridley from Atlanta, Allen Robinson from the Bears, Mike Evans, Jarvis Landry, Crowder, Tyrell Williams, Tyler Boyd, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, AJ Brown, and I've added Josh Gordon. Tight ends: Zach Ertz, Darren Waller, Ryan Griffin from the Jets, Olsen, Goddard, McDonald, Howard, and Eifert. Defensive special teams: Pittsburgh, Cleveland, the Bears, Buffalo, and the Saints. That gives me a total of 48 players on the list. 48 total players. Now, before we build some lineups, I'd like to do a game-by-game breakdown and do this with the point spread and just some targets utilizing the players from our player pool, and just talk about the games real quick. First game on the slate, and this is in order of the over-unders. So Tampa Bay at Atlanta. Atlanta's a 4-point favorite. The opening line was where the opening game total was 53 points. Atlanta, the last couple weeks, has had a kind of a real juggernaut on defense, where they had been getting pretty much thrashed earlier in the season. They've stepped it up the last couple games. But I think Tampa Bay is a formidable opponent. Winston does turn the ball over a lot, but he puts the ball in the air a lot. He averages 40 pass attempts per game. So I think this is going to be a back and forth game, and I want to have a lot of pieces and a lot of exposure to this. I want Winston, Godwin, Evans, O.J. Howard. I know Cameron Brate had the really good game last week, but I think recency bias might make people go to him. And I have more interest in O.J. Howard this week. For Atlanta, Matt Ryan, 7 out of 9 games he's thrown over 300 yards. Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Hooper's out again this week. You still have the third wide receiver, Gage, Brian Hill. Now, Brian Hill burned a lot of people last week. He was the chalk running back, so to speak, because of his price. He was taking Freeman's spot. I had very low exposure to Brian Hill because Atlanta wasn't running the ball well when they had Freeman. What would make you think that suddenly they're going to be a running team with Hill? It just didn't make sense, and actually helped me cash in a lot of other lineups because the lack of exposure I did have to him. So I think this game will shoot out. I do put a lot of faith in the Vegas lines and totals, and I start my research by looking at the game totals. I'm interested in the games that have the higher totals because these are going to be the games that have the players necessary for them to be high scoring. Vegas isn't in the business of giving money away, and so I put a lot of faith into that, and I let it be my guide. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't go down and look at the other games and try to find mismatches in games that might have lower game totals. And certainly games with 53-point projections could end up 17-10. I mean, there's no guarantee, but these are just guidelines that you can use, just an edge, which in the end, that's all we're looking for is an edge. Second game, Seattle at Philly, and this game actually opened up with Seattle as a favorite. Now Philadelphia is a 1.5 point home favorite. The game total is 49 points. And this is really interesting. Alshon Jeffrey hasn't been ruled in or out. If he's in, I would probably temper my expectations for Ertz because they do run double tight end. And if Jeffrey's in there, that's just more mouths to feed. But if Jeffrey's is ruled out for some reason, I think I'm going to have a lot of interest in Zach Ertz. Seattle does give up significant yardage and fantasy points to the tight end position, and that's their weakness that Philadelphia can exploit. Now, I know Seattle ideally wants to just be able to run the ball, and if they're able to do that, then it's not that Russell Wilson have a bad game. He's just not going to get value at 6,800 if they're just if they're able to control the game with Chris Carson. So, however you think that game's going to play out, and lineup building has a lot to do with how you think the game's going to go and build your lineups accordingly. I like to game stack a lot. I've had a lot of luck doing that, and I'll be doing that tomorrow. And I use a few different quarterbacks. I think any of you that have tuned into this channel before know that I mentioned I don't MME, meaning I don't put in 150 lineups in one contest. If I could, I would. I'm just not in the position to do that. It totally makes sense if you're using an optimizer and you know you, you got a player pool and you just get a bunch of different randomizations of your player pool. But I do play several different contests, and I like to spread it out. I'll play some large GPP tournaments. I'll play some head-to-head, some double-up, some 50-50, smaller tourneys, 100 people, things of that nature. And I'll build a few different lineups that I like and spread them out. I don't necessarily hedge myself, but I mean, there's out of this player pool that I've developed, there's three or four quarterbacks that I really like a lot, and I'll have most of my exposure to them. And but I do definitely use the player pool that I just shared with you guys. Now I play some 4 o'clock games as well, but that's just usually when my 1 o'clock's not doing so well, I'll try to put in some for the 4 o'clock. And I actually, a few years ago, that was the first large GPP tournament that I won. Was a 4. It was all the 4 o'clock games plus the Monday night game. And I remember the player that I had to sweat. I remember the exact play that sent me over the top. I was playing against 29,000 other people. I had 2 entries, and the player was Brandon Marshall, and it was the Jets versus the Colts. And I played it out in my head, man, if this guy could just get a touchdown, and it happened for me. And that was my first large GPP tournament win. I haven't had a lot, but I've cashed in a lot, and so I believe in my process, and that's what I'm trying to help you guys. Show you some players, so these processes. I'll share you. I'm not here to give you the picks for you to run out and use. I'm show you my process, show the players that I'm interested in, and you take them and mold them the way that you want for your lineups. It's your money, your investment. But back to Seattle and Philly. Um, Philly's defense, they've been playing a little bit better against the pass, but that is where their weakness is at. So if and they're stingy against the run, so if they are able to shut down Chris Carson and do some scoring against Seattle, those are the types of games that Russell Wilson thrives in. So he's definitely viable. I didn't have much interest in Carson Wentz this week. I do have a lot of interest in Ertz and Goddard, and for Seattle, Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett. I'm interested in Josh Gordon as well. Wilson targeted him in the first game that he played for Seattle in some really clutch situations, and I think that gained his trust with him towards the end of the game. And Lockett went out of the game, and he did go to Gordon. So he's got Lockett, Metcalf, and Gordon there. So Interesting game. I'll have a little bit of exposure to it. Second highest total on the board. Next, Carolina, New Orleans. The New Orleans, a 9.5 point home favorite. Game total's 48. I have a lot of interest in this game as well. Um, Pieces of it. I'm not so high on Drew Brees this week. Um, because moving the best way to move the ball and the easiest path to victory is through uh, the Carolina's defense against the run. They're horrible against the run, and this to me sets up as a Kamara and Murray game, a combination of the two. I don't ever use two running backs from the same team. Well, I've done it a few times. I just don't do it that much. But Murray might be a nice pivot. Kamara is going to have a ton of ownership because he's so much cheaper than McCaffrey, right underneath McCaffrey, same game, and everybody knows that um, Carolina is horrible against the run. Now New Orleans, their run defense is stingy, so that just means they'll throw the ball to McCaffrey, which he does most of the damage and most of his damage through the passing game. Anyway, not that he can't take 180 yards on you in a heartbeat, but McCaffrey's going to get his. He's matchup proof. It doesn't matter if they're winning, losing. You don't have to factor in game script with him, how the game's going to go. It's just a matter of getting up to him. When you put him in your lineup at 10,500, it molds your lineup. It restricts how you can build your lineup, and I mean for him, you have to get 30 points out of him or more for value. Now he's averaging 32.5 fantasy points a game, so he's averaging what you need at 10,500. It's the ceiling of that, and he does have the capability, as we've seen, to bust the slate. Um, Mid-season, he had a game where he had 51 points. But I'll have some shares of him, not a lot. I'll have some Kamara, but I'm probably going to pivot off of him in other plays. I maybe have some interest in Murray. Um, um, Thomas draws Bradbury tomorrow, which he's not had luck against in the past, but Thomas is another one that is matchup proof. It seems he gets targeted a ton by Breeze, but I just don't know how much they'll actually have to do through the air. But there's pieces of that game that I like to use, and there's ways of stacking it. I'm not really interested in stacking the Carolina side that much. I do like Olsen. I have some interest in Moore, even though he's going to draw Lattimore, which is a difficult matchup. So I temper my expectations for him. And of course, you have McCaffrey there that you have to consider as well. Dallas at New England. I'm a Cowboys fan. New England's a 6.5 point home favorite. The game total is 46. This is a very difficult game for the Cowboys. I'll be ecstatic if they come away with a win. It just seems like the Patriots just always have a way of getting it done. One thing the Cowboys definitely won't be able to do is go in there and turn the ball over. And New England's defense has been pretty formidable till this last game. Um, Baltimore showed that the one way that you can put New England in check is through the running game. So I don't think that Cooper and Dak are going to have really big games. I do think I changed my mind. I didn't have him in my player pool, and as I mentioned when I was reading down the list, I added Zeke Elliott. His ownership is low, and that's interesting. I mean, he's the bell cow back, and he's another one that's on the field, win, lose, or draw. They haven't been as much this year getting him the ball in the passing game out of the backfield, but he's just getting a ton of usage, and you have to consider those guys, and they lower the price down on him, and he might be a really nice pivot off of some of the higher owned because his ownership's going to be lower, and he actually contrarian pick because everyone expects that Dallas will go in there and New England will shut down the run game. But if they remember that Baltimore game, it wasn't just Lamar Jackson doing the damage. Ingram was getting it done too. They were grinding him up in the running game, and I believe that's what Dallas will have to do to stay in this game. And they have to play pretty much a perfect game, keep no turnovers and low penalties. Or they get penalized a lot as well. So we'll see. I do have interest in Brady and Edelman and James White especially. Cowboys have problems with running backs that catch the ball out of the backfield. That's one of their weaknesses. And Edelman, it doesn't matter. He seems to be open all the time. So I think Dallas is a little more stingy against the run. The numbers show that they're decent against the pass. I mean, it has them listed as sixth overall versus the quarterback. Um, but I just think that Brady's going to come out, spread the ball all over the place, and it's just a difficult place to win. Oakland at the Jets. Oakland's a 3-point road favorite, which is an odd situation for the Raiders. 45.5 game total. I think this game is. I mean, you have Jacobs and you have Le'Veon Bell, but I actually think it's going to be the passing games. That's where the weakness of these teams on defense is at. The Jets have a ton of injuries on defense. Their linebacking core is missing, so you can see middle of the field, which that favors Waller. The Jets also have trouble with on the edge, so that this could set up nicely for Tyrell Williams. And the Raiders have difficulty defending the pass as well. So Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder, they're all in play. I do think they've talked for a few weeks of getting Bell more and more involved. I mean, he has a large snap percentage. He doesn't share carries, but they don't get him the ball out of the backfield as much, and maybe they'll try that this week. So he's in play as well. I really temper my expectations for Josh Jacobs. They do like to give the ball to him a ton, but I think this game is going to set up both these quarterbacks, so be airing it out in this game. Miami at Cleveland, the highest or spread on the board. Cleveland's a 10.5 point home favorite. The over/under set at 44. I don't think Miami has any offensive players that would give Cleveland any difficulty. They're going to be, I guess it's going to be Patrick Laird running the ball. You got old man Fitzpatrick back there slinging it around. But Cleveland's pretty good against the pass. And I think this is going to, there's a lot of interest in Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. Sets up nice narrative game for Jarvis Landry. He's playing against his former team, the Dolphins, and it's his birthday tomorrow. All kinds of narratives in this game, but I think this is a Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt game, and I wouldn't be surprised if Chubb was the top back on the slate tomorrow. I think they're going to give it to him a ton, and I think that Cleveland's defense is going to give Miami lots of problems. I have no interest in any of the Miami players in this game in particular. I think this is a very difficult situation for them, and I have, as I mentioned, Chubb. Some interest in Hunt. Hunt's since he's came his first two games back, they've been targeting him a ton out of the backfield as well. He's already averaging 11 fantasy points per game. And Baker Mayfield likes to go to him, but I just don't know how much they'll actually have to do. And I have a lot of interest in Nick Chubb this week. Next, Detroit at Washington. Detroit's a 3.5 point road favorite with backup quarter Driscoll. The game total is 42. I have interest in Darius Geis. Not sure what the situation is with Adrian Peterson, but if Peterson is out, I feel like Geis is the free spot tomorrow. Detroit is horrible against the run, and this could be Geis's coming out party against them. I'm going to have some shares of him anyhow because I think he's going to get a larger share than Adrian Peterson. Adrian's beat up a little bit, And I just feel like this game could be, and he's kind of going under notice. But if word comes that Peterson's out, his Geiss's ownership's going to shoot through the ceiling. I know that he's similar to the free square we had a few weeks ago in Jalen Samuels when he was 4,000 in the Pittsburgh game when Connor was ruled out. So I do have interest in him, and not too much interest in the Detroit offense. I know Driscoll didn't look too bad in the Dallas game. Had a lot of yards passing, was fifth highest scoring quarterback last week. I just don't have a lot of interest in that their side of the ball, and but I do have the interest in Geis. Jacksonville at Tennessee. Tennessee's a 3-point home favorite, 41.5 point game total. Have a lot of interest in Derrick Henry. He's one of my favorite running backs this week. He doesn't share carries, and he's going to be getting the ball a ton in this game. Likewise for Fournette, I've toyed with the idea of playing both of them. I don't generally do that because I feel like the game's going to go one way or the other, and one team builds a lead and establishes the run, the other team may have to throw the ball. But they have been getting Fournette involved in the running game a little bit more this year with Nick Foles back. You can see them doing that, but I would not be surprised if there was if these two running backs combined for 45 to 50 touches between them tomorrow. And but I will have more shares of Derrick Henry than any other running back. He's definitely one of my favorites on the slate. I don't have any much interest in either one of these teams' passing games, but I think I like running backs that get a lot of touches, carries, and the ones that get the receptions. That just adds to it. But I have a lot of interest in Derrick Henry. Last year on Thursday night against Jacksonville, excuse me, that's when he had his 200-yard game. I don't think that's going to happen this week, but he definitely has the ability to take over the game, and they love to just give him the ball. Giants of Chicago. Chicago's a 6-point home favorite. Game total is 40.5 points. You're not going to see Saquon Barkley at this price too many times. And he often shines in these matchups that are deemed to be tough. This is going to be a tough place to play, though. Going to Chicago, bringing a rookie quarterback who has had the propensity to turn the ball over. Chicago likes to put pressure on the quarterback. I think this is a really bad spot for Daniel Jones. So I'm not sure if Barkley is going to be effective or not. Evan Ingram's are ruled out. Rhett Ellison, so both their tight ends are ruled out. Not sure if Sterling Shepard's back or not, but I have no interest in the Giants running game. A little bit of interest in Barkley because, as I mentioned, these are the type of games, low ownership, his price is lowered, and he's kind of going under the radar at that price. And it wouldn't take much for him to get value. And the weakness of Chicago this year has been defending the run. It's not the pass defense. So if they could get Barkley going, the situation. But I have to tell you, in this game, one thing that I'm really interested in, I thought it set up well for him a few weeks ago against Detroit, but Trubisky's been playing horrible, and I still feel like he's got that one or two really good ceiling games, and he loves to go to Allen Robinson. I love that combination this week. I know it's the third lowest total on the board at 40.5 points, and risky, but I'm going to have some exposure to that. I really like Chicago stack, and I think it'll be contrarian. Trubisky's going to have very low ownership. But for him to put the ball in the air, you're dependent on the Giants to make this somewhat competitive, which means you have to put a lot of faith in Barkley. So that's the game script to build that particular lineup. So I will have some shares of Robinson and Trubisky, and I don't mind, running Robinson by himself. He's definitely a target monster. The matchup is fantastic for him, and if the Giants slow down the Bears running game, slow down Montgomery and Cohen, you can see situation where Robinson has a really big game. Pittsburgh at Cincinnati. Pittsburgh's a 6.5 point road favorite. It's opened up at 7 points. The game total is 39 points. James Conner's out. Juju Smith-Schuster's out. I believe their lineman Pouncey, who's involved in the helmet assault, he's out. And everyone thinks Cincinnati or Pittsburgh's coming to Cincinnati to beat them up and then run out of town. I'm not a Bengals fan at all. I do live here in Ohio. I feel this is the Bengals Super Bowl, and 0-10 teams are dangerous. As silly as that sounds, I don't know if they're going to win the game, but this is the Super Bowl to them. These two teams do not like each other, and Pittsburgh's coming in really beat up. Their defense is very difficult, and they're coming in against a rookie quarterback, Finley. This is his third start. Um, they've been getting the ball to Mixon a lot. If they can get Mixon going and open up some things for like Eifert in the middle of the field, Pittsburgh is weak against the tight end position, and give Finley some confidence. And if they get that pressure on him, check down to Eifert, and as I said, get Mixon going, they could keep it close. And anything can happen in the NFL. I mean, nothing's guaranteed. This is a division game, and I think there's going to be. I wouldn't be surprised if they won. I'm not saying they're going to win, but I won't be surprised if they win this game outright. So you heard it here first. If it doesn't happen, so be it. I just have a feeling. I don't think they're going to go winless this year, but and this is a difficult task, and that's where those type of things usually happen. Last and not least is Denver at Buffalo. Buffalo's a 4.5 point home favorite. The game total is 37 points. I truthfully, these are two fantastic defenses. Shut down the passing game really well. I honestly don't have any interest in any parts of this game other than the defenses. Have some exposure to the Bills. I tend to like the home favorites as my defenses, or the teams that are big favorites because of the implied game script. But that's all I'm really interested in that game. It's the lowest total on the board, and I don't like any of the offensive matchups. I don't know how this game gets to 37 points, but it could be 45-42. You never know. So um, that wraps up the game. All the games. There's 11 games on tomorrow's main slate, and that's what I do the research for. And so like I do every week, I share with you a build that I've done utilizing just the player pool, and then we'll talk about the one that was built with the optimizer. So I have a lot of interest in Matt Ryan. As I mentioned at running back, I'm going with Geis, and that allows me to spend up at some other areas. As I said, my favorite running back this week is Henry. Really like Henry. I like Tyrell Williams. I like Godwin as part of the game stack in the Atlanta Tampa Bay game. And I like Julio Jones. Team him up with Matt Ryan. My tight end, I'm going with McDonald from Pittsburgh, with Smith Schuster being ruled out, and Connor out. I could see Pittsburgh targeting McDonald a ton. I like both tight ends in this game, actually. I like Eifert as well. My flex, I usually like to try to get a running back in there. I'm not going to be able to due to the amount of salary I have left. So I'm going with a tight end, which is contrarian, but I like it as far as getting exposure to this game. In particular, I'm looking for Howard from Tampa Bay. And my defense special teams, I really like the Saints this week at home um, versus Kyle Allen. They put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and I just like that. Spent all but 500. I have the game stack going there with Ryan, Julio Jones, got bringing it back with Godwin and Howard. So I got a lot of exposure to the game with the highest total on the board, and that's what I want. I'm going out there on a limb a little bit with Geis, but the matchup is phenomenal, and if they get him going, I don't see why the coach wouldn't keep him going. And I think it's sneaky. He's going to be lower on. If Peterson is limited um, or out, now if he's out, it's going to drive his ownership up, and I might rethink this a little bit. But this is one particular lineup that I'm going to be using. I really like it. I like the Raiders passing game. I want a piece of that game. I love Julio Jones with Matt Ryan tomorrow, and as I talked about previously, Derrick Henry is my favorite running back this week. I like Godwin over Evans this week. Evans had a few weeks in a row, and the ownership is leaning towards him, so I'm going to pivot off of him a little bit and go to Chris Godwin. Okay, so as I always do every week, I take the players from the player pool I've created. This week I had 48 players altogether, and I take them. I use an optimizer from a site that I have a purchased um, subscription to, and I set up. I put a few rules in. I always, if whatever quarterbacks are in my player pool, I list the targets that I want to have with them, which are always from my player pool. Um, I always like to use a wide receiver with my quarterback, at least one target. The only quarterback I don't do that with is Lamar Jackson, and I still like to use like Andrews or Hollywood um, Brown with him, but um, for the most part, I like to have a target with my um, quarterback. I set it up to where I don't want two running backs from the same team, and I set some exposures. I set it for 150 lineups to see how many it can give me out of my player pool. Some weeks my player pool's a little bit smaller, like maybe 42, 43 players, and it can only give me 80 to 100 different randomizations. This week with the player pool of 48 players, and that includes defense, special teams as well, it was able to give me 145 lineups. And I've had 2 weeks this year where my player pool um, used in the optimizer generated the winning lineup that would have beat out the winning lineup for the Millie Maker on Draftkings. So I just let it run. As I said, I set some minimum exposures. You have to highlight a few of the players that you like the best. I never go for more than 30% exposure at any position because I just want to see the different randomizations of the players that I have. Doing them manually, there's no way I'm going to see all that. And I just go through and I look at the ones that, and I oftentimes do. Oh, that's a unique way of doing it. That's a unique build. So without further ado, this is the first lineup that was generated. It did show that it had a projected ownership of 134%, which is kind of high. And so I don't know that it'll be that contrarian, mainly because I figure that Matt Ryan and any pieces of that game are going to be chalky. But here we go. It had Matt Ryan at quarterback, Derrick Henry at running back, Alvin Kamara at running back, who right now has the highest ownership on the entire slate. Chris Godwin, bringing it back with Godwin. And Josh Gordon at wide receiver. And where is Josh at? Is he 5,000? Josh Gordon. Sorry about this. There he is, Josh Gordon. Well, 4,200. And had Calvin Ridley. So pivot on. He did have a really big game last week, which is probably going to drive his ownership up because he is so much less than Julio Jones. Let's see here. Calvin Ridley. Yeah, he's significantly less, 1,200 less than Julio. Tight end was McDonald from Pittsburgh. Also had O.J. Howard in the flex, so that's interesting. That's similar to, well, it is what I had. We were going to go right here. Was it 3,300? Let's see here. O.J. Howard. Here we go, 3,300. And defense special teams was the Saints. So my exposures affected some of this a little bit, and I spent all but 200. And again, that's a game stack with Ryan Godwin and or Ryan and Howard, Ryan Ridley and bringing it back with Godwin and Howard. Got some exposure there to Henry and Kamara, which probably pretty chalky right there. That's why it had 134% ownership. But I will be using this, and I use several of the ones that are generated. I'll do like the quarter 20 entries or a dollar 20 entry max, some of those, and just go through and pick, maybe pick 4 with Matt Ryan, 4 with Jameis Winston, and do it like that. But there you go. This is the lineup that was generated, the very first one. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for joining me all week. Really appreciate your time. My subscribers have been trending upwards. My viewers have definitely went up, and I really appreciate that. And I'm hoping to really make this channel grow into something a lot bigger. I hope that all this information was useful and helpful. I hope these charts helped you guys out. Use them the best that you can. Put your own lineup together. Put your own twist to it. And use game script, and I do suggest trying to stack and make sense of it. Stack a few three. I like to use. I use a lot of 3-1, 3-2, and stacks like that. And I have had a lot of luck doing it that way. Expose the matchups and take advantage of them. Look at that. The charts that I use, look for the teams that have the better matchups and factor in the game script and build your lineup so that it makes sense. Consider the game totals and lines. Look for the games that have the higher totals. As I said before, Vegas isn't in the business of just giving away money. So they set those lines and totals for a reason. Years ago, I had something that I was doing, and I decided that I would try to adjust the Vegas lines, and I learned real quick that that's a big no-no. No matter how you think a game's going to go, there's a reason that number is where it's at, and those guys know a lot more than I do. Don't forget the injury report tomorrow at 11:30 for the 1 o'clock games and 3 o'clock for the afternoon games. Always look at that, even if they're not on the injury list on Saturday. Look at it on Sunday. Some people tweak things or last second or get sick. Or a few weeks ago we had a thing where at the last minute Robert Woods was taken out for the Rams, because you don't want to accept a zero. And it doesn't matter what kind of contest you're in. You do not want a zero. an unforced 0. So, um, but always check the injury reports. I encourage you guys to please drop me some opinions and comments below. Tell me what you like about the charts, something I can add to it, something to help you out, something that you liked, whatever. I try to get back to you right away. I've had some guys reach out to me, ask me if I was doing a video on this or that, or tomorrow I will be doing a Sunday Night Football showdown video. I had toyed with the idea of doing one for the Dallas Patriots game tomorrow, but I'm not sure how many people play the showdowns other than or pay that much attention to them other than the Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night. But I will be back with a Sunday night showdown video for the Packers and the 49ers. It really helps me out when you guys share, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I really appreciate it if you do that for me. So you get notified when my next video post. You can also follow me on Twitter at Winning About. And I wish you guys good luck tomorrow. Use this stuff, do your research, and I hope to hear on Monday about someone who took this player pool and built some winning lineups. Or I hope to be split in a contest with you. I don't mind a split. Something's better than a 0. And I want to bounce back. Last week was my worst week of the season. I'd had some pretty good weeks leading up to that. But I'm ready to get back at it tomorrow. Good luck again. Thanks again for joining me. My name is Ty Patton. This is all about winning daily fantasy sports, and I'll see you tomorrow.